Ready? Aim!
There's too many!
Anyone see my mammoth?
Stubby! Hello! I am back, and this week, look who it is!
It's me, Mario. No, Scott, Miniature Maniac.
Yeah, so Scott's joining us today because for some reason he likes Song of Ice and Fire. Who knew? And he also kind of likes the content that we make. I think
Just a little bit,
not much, right? No, didn't think so.
Not much.
No. I think you've watched like 5 seconds. That does most people's heads in. Right. So obviously we're going to go through everything as usual today. If no one doesn't know who Scott is, he runs a relatively small YouTube channel on YouTube called Miniac. You may have heard of him. He's yeah. Do you want to say anything about your own self, Scott, that people might not know?
No, that was a great intro. Yeah, the YouTube channel that's on YouTube, and yeah, you might have heard of it.
Yeah.
My name is Scott the Miniature Maniac. My channel's all about painting miniatures, the love of the hobby, the tools, the techniques, everything. I love the hobby and everything about it. Even some gameplay stuff on there as well. So yeah, I like to do it all.
That's what it's about, right? I know. As of the last couple of weeks, I've been watching you play one of your friends, Curtis, on your stream on Twitch, which has been great. And long-suffering Greyjoy player now at this moment, right?
I don't know. The problem is I don't know if it's me or it's them. You know, it's kind of one of those situations. I'm hesitant to be like, oh, it's the army. But yes, I have been struggling recently, not doing too hot on the win rate as of the last 10 games.
We'll get there. Maybe today will be about giving you some advice. Maybe
I love that.
There might be some Greyjoy players who you could look up to in the world.
Sure.
But no, cool, awesome. Well, we'll get through all of that in due course. So, the first big piece of news that's come out of this week was that A Song of Ice and Fire, specifically Gen Con, which is approaching. We'll talk about Gen Con later on in more detail. But there was a rumour that you could change lists between day 1 and day 2 of Gen Con at Nationals, which everyone was like, what? That seems really silly. They've come back out and they've basically said that's not happening. You enter your tournament lists as you would on a day 1, and you play them on day 2. I don't know if you knew about that, Scott. If that was something you were aware of. No?
I wasn't. Are they still doing the same 2-list thing like most tournaments do, or is it 3 lists perhaps?
Just 2 lists, yeah, just normal 2 lists.
Okay.
So it should be in theory just like standard tournament, which I think literally everyone was like, that makes a lot of sense. That's what everyone else does. Why you did this different thing with list changing and stuff for Nationals is just a bit weird and unnecessary. So yeah, that means positive news for everybody.
I have a question for you about that. Do you think that they changed their policy about the list changing because of the community reaction or because it was a mistake initially?
Part of me thinks that it was a mistake. I do think it was a genuine mistake, and I know that they have run events like that. Adepticon, I think, did it once, and I believe last year's Gen Con did it. But I also am aware that the community was pretty out of it. I know that obviously guys in the Minnesota area. I know that Evan, for example, one of the guys you know, is actually going to nationals, and when he heard the news, he heard it through me. I told him and was like, "Did you know this is a thing?" And he was like, "What?" And I know that he had discussed it with his community and things like that, and a lot of them didn't know. So I think part of it is like community saying to people, "Yeah, no, this isn't right." So I do think it's like part and parcel mistake, and also community outrage, as they call it, right?
Yeah, a little bit of column A, a little bit of column B. I got you.
Yeah. Cool. So that's the main piece of news, right? That's the in an entire week. That's the only thing that happened. We can move on, end the episode, go home. I'm already home. Why am I doing that? No, the other the other big thing is we actually saw and we have now seen models for boxes that are supposedly coming out in Q3 this year. Good news. We've seen the models, and we can comment on the models, and we can talk about all the characters and all that side. Bad news is that we've seen a release date, a temporary release date, which is looking like the end of December, which isn't really Q3, unless it's that's a bit awkward, really.
I've kind of seemed to expect that from Cool Mini or not, though. They have a lot of projected dates that they seem to be like kind of way off of all the time, so par for the course.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll dive right in, right? And the first one to look at, I know that this is probably a bit of PTSD for yourself, Scott, given that the last stream I saw.
Oh no!
It's Free Folk. This is the Varamyr Sixskins box, and we have got Varamyr on top of his snow bear with an eagle. We've got his 3 wolves, who I can never remember the names of, and I'm sure he just randomly replaces them when they die anyway, so who cares what their names are. His shadow cat and his eagle as well, his actual eagle on its own. First of all, Scott, you've designed miniatures before. You're pretty good at the whole looking at an aesthetic of a thing and seeing if it's good or bad. Opinions on the miniatures?
Well, I think the one to really talk about is the top left. It's the actual character riding his bear. And I feel like when I look at that, I just see a whole lot of texture, a whole lot of bear fur. So I guess for painting, that could make it pretty easy because like washes are going to settle really nicely in there. If you're a dry brusher, those details get picked up really nicely. But in terms of like someone who wants to paint it for fun and enjoyment, it's kind of a whole lot of the same kind of experience across the entire miniature. And that kind of goes for actually all the animals, or especially like the lynx in the bottom left. Is like just kind of like all just like uniform texture. Not the most fun to paint.
Yeah, I can see that. I have to say that having done plenty of wolves for Space Wolves back in the day, Vampire Count wolf packs and things like that, it was very much pick up a selection of wolves. Sometimes you're holding like 7 in your hand or whatever, and just getting grey and just going, well, there's some dry brush, and I get a different grey, there's some more dry brush. There you go, done. Yeah, they're not the most interesting. But, as is always the case, we always get to see very interesting takes on these things. I don't know. I mean, this is going back a while. Were you in the community playing song when the Care Bears were done?
I started playing like maybe like a little bit over a year ago at this point. So I'm not sure if that was before or after my time. But I don't recognize it though.
I think it was before. Do you know the skin changes and the skin changer bears from Free Folk?
Yeah.
So someone literally painted up a bear in different Care Bear colors with the image on the stomach and everything. It was.
I love that so much.
It was both a crime and also amazing. So yeah, I think people will have excitement. Obviously, the box itself, we can speculate on the rules. He is, I believe, if we double check the description here, we can see it's in Spanish, and thankfully my Spanish is impeccable. That is 6 tactics cards. That is 1 special rules card, It is 1 unit card, no, 3 unit cards, sorry, and 1 attachment card. So.
Okay, so we got a commander, an attachment version.
And some kind of like the 3 units. I'm guessing is like the bear, maybe himself on the bear, the cat, and the wolves. I'm guessing. I don't imagine the eagle would have a unit. It's just a single base, right? So,
Right.
I'm thinking him as a solo, as a commander, perhaps with his units, and also potentially him as an attachment, which would go in bear cav, of course.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I was just gonna ask the question. Wait, do Free Folk have like a cavalry unit that he could go into, and they just got that bear cavalry unit like what? Maybe a couple of weeks or a month or two ago?
I mean, it depends where in the world you live. I think if you lived in Singapore, you got it like 4 months ago. Oh yeah, it's old hat. If you're in the UK, it isn't released yet, and if you're in the US, you've had it for about a month.
Okay. Right. Yeah.
But yeah, it's it must be for the bear cav, I'm guessing. You obviously aren't a Free Folk player, which is sad to my ears. But are you excited to see a character like this in the game? Do you think something different?
Yeah. I think in general we don't have a lot of mounted cav characters, and I am painfully aware of this because of Drogo, who has expert duelist and is unkillable. You just can't deal with them. So it'd be interesting to see like a cav version of expert duelist or some kind of tuning for that. Have a kind of an answer to people like that. I don't know if it's anyone else. Is Drogo the only one with expert duelist on a horse?
Yes. Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, more variety is interesting to me. So yeah, more mounted characters as commanders, attachments. I think that's good for the game.
Yeah. No, I mean I tend to agree. The more we get in terms of variety, just in variety of anything really, is a positive. Paul in chat says he's going to paint the cat as the Cheshire Cat from Alice in Wonderland.
Excellent.
Yeah, so yeah. No other comments on Varamyr from chat. No, so we'll move on, and we'll move on to this is something that people have been crying out for, I think, for a long time. Baratheon sufferers all over the world are happy this day that they are getting this. I mean, this is a tasty box. We've got Stannis on a horse. I mean, do we need it? Just Stannis on a horse, right? That's all that matters.
Yeah, those models look awesome.
Yeah, they really do. I have to admit, I think they've gone above and beyond themselves with some of the characters in terms of like the sculpting, and yeah, these are phenomenal.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge fan of the medieval aesthetic that this game introduces. And like these guys, especially the guy right in the middle, Stannis, like mounted knight, kind of really gives me that knight in shining armor vibe that I love from King Arthur and stuff like that. And some of even the more understated ones, like the 2 characters, bottom right, top right, those are simpler looking models, but their poses are really cool. They're not overdone, which is another element of this game that I really like in design. Yeah, these are really attractive models for sure.
I have to admit, a lot of people saying Patchface, top middle, the jester, that he's quite a nice model, and I think he is. But for me, and I don't know if it's just roguey type vibe, bottom right, the guy with the dagger or the short sword and his long sword, that's quintessential rogue pose, and they've just pulled it off really well.
Yeah, I agree. It's a simple thing executed really well, and I think it looks great.
Yeah. If Carlo was here, he would talk about the tactical rocks that we see on a couple of those guys.
Yeah.
But to be honest, they're not imposing. I don't feel like they're out of place. So they're not too bad. I can live with those.
Yeah, it gives the model maybe a more interesting pose. Does Carlos not like the rocks at all?
Oh, Carlo doesn't like anything on rocks. Like honestly, when people add height to miniatures, Carlo gets angry. He's not just upset. He's not just disappointed. He's physically angry.
Okay.
So yeah.
So no drinks on the rocks for Carlos either, then, eh?
No. Okay. So in terms of the characters, we've got obviously King Stannis on the horse. I have to ask before we move on to the potentially next reveal, as you might guess what the next one might be. Are you a Stannis boy or are you a Renly boy?
Okay. I need to reveal some potentially embarrassing knowledge about myself. I have seen the first maybe 1.5 seasons of Game of Thrones, and read none of the books. So I don't really have much of an opinion about the two. I know that, okay, this might be bad. Is Stannis the older brother who's bald?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Oh God, thank God. Okay. Um, I think his younger brother is like a mega twerp, so I would prefer Stannis. I can't handle that guy. He's just too annoying to listen to. Yeah, we'll go with Stannis.
I'm glad you chose well. You chose well.
Okay, good, good.
I know there are a lot of Renly fanboys, but I have to admit I prefer Stannis. Yeah, I have to. Yeah, we'll breeze over the fact that you barely know anything about the lore and stuff. Marwyn in chat is probably going to be like vomiting up everything that he's ever eaten, because he'll
Marwyn,
be.
please.
He'll. Yeah, see, read none of the books. Stream's over. Mickey kick him. Yeah, you've made Marwyn very unhappy, but it's fine. It's fine. He doesn't rule this roost, even though he thinks he does. Right. Characters we've got Justin Massey, Dale Seaworth. Do you know? You must. Well, do you know Davos Seaworth?
Yes, that name is very familiar.
Yes, he's the guy with the like tops of his fingers cut off because he helped Stannis. But yeah, he's one of his older son, I believe. Dale is in the box, which is always good. Always love to see more Seaworths in the game. And we're getting to see a Maester as well. Specifically, we've got 12 tactics cards, so we can assume 2 commanders in the box. I think it would probably be fair to say that, at a guess, we're going to get Commander Stannis on a horse. And probably it says we've got a real mix of the other alternatives, so we could be looking at Justin Massey, Dale Seaworth, or Brian Farring, and the 2 NCUs are almost certainly going to be Maester Crescent and Patchface, the Jester. I can't imagine the Jester taking to the battlefield, but who knows?
I have a question for you.
Go on.
So there aren't many mechanics like this in, I don't want to say most miniature war games, but a lot, where it's like they give you a benefit and then they also give you a little bit of a negative. The one thing that comes to mind is like strange relics, like from Euron Greyjoy.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at this Jester, and I can't help but feel that maybe he's going to have a similar mechanic like that to him. And I'm curious, do you like those kinds of things or no?
Whether I like them, I think depends on the flavor of them. I think it's interesting you bring up Euron. Like, do I think it's good? Nah, I don't think it is. Right? Do I like it? Yeah, I actually do, because I think it gives, like, Euron, I can see it as the flavor. Like, he isn't very much liked by most other people in the Greyjoy forces. He is like the outcast, if you will. So him being in a group bringing this benefit, but with this negative downside, I think is thematically correct. So yeah, that doesn't bother me.
Okay.
But it does mean that unfortunately he's not quite as good as you want him to be.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. Euron, and we'll talk about it later on in your the fun times you've been having with the Greyjoys. I think Euron has that problem where he's just a bit not good enough. Like 2 pillage tokens is nice, but it's not nice enough.
Yeah, to take 1 damage each turn or each action. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you.
Because you kind of want to put them on Reavers, right? And then just run the Reavers forward and just kill everyone. But then you feel really bad for doing it because your Reavers die.
Yeah, they died a little bit too easily. Yep, I got you.
So, we're going to get 5 attachments in the box, 2 NCUs, and 2 commanders, which is great. But we'll move on to... I mean, this box is probably, in my opinion, this is probably moving on to one of the best value for money boxes ever that they're ever going to release, and it is Baratheon Heroes 4 with Renly and the Renly's Queen's Guard, as he calls them. Those guys are fantastic. Playing on that knight aesthetic that we talked about before, I think these guys are really pulling no punches on the design. What do you think?
Holy cow! All right. I might be a Renly boy after seeing these. I don't know.
You've just seen them up close and was like, what the fuck?
Yeah. So the one issue I had with Baratheon, which is why I didn't go with them in the first place, is because they had some of the models just had like very giant antlers, just like kind of all over the place, and kind of just felt a little bit intrusive. But these guys, it's tasteful. Maybe the one person who's the commander has it, and then yeah, we're really punching that King Arthur aesthetic up to 11 with these guys. Super cool. I love it. I love it a lot.
I can very easily seeing Rainbow Guard, not Queen's Guard. Apologies. I can imagine these guys being picked up purely for a painting hobbyist, right? For someone who just wants to paint nice models, this is a box to pick up.
Absolutely.
And then, as chat was correcting me on, they are the Rainbow Guard, so they've all got different colors as well associated with them. So I can imagine people playing with that massively, and not just doing silver armor, this, that, and the other, but giving those tints and those washes. That's juicy.
Yeah, that's really cool. So that they have like a similar kind of idea as like a questing knight might have, where you have like a knight who's from a particular province or area wearing his regalia, and then he goes to fight for someone else, but keeps wearing his own clothing.
That kind of style,
cool.
yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I am looking forward to this box to come out because obviously, I mean, it's a new unit, right? Which we'll get onto in a second. But it's just cool characters, lots of scope, and that does bring us into the next part is the actual box itself. We've seen the models. It's a unit, right? It's a unit. Have you ever seen Joffrey's Kingsguard on the field?
Okay, the first time I've ever played against them was actually in the last qualifier for nationals.
Oh god!
And it was surprising. I had never seen that unit before, but yeah, a lot of interesting mechanics.
Yeah. Well, the Rainbow Guard coming out for Renly is exactly the same design as the Kingsguard. So we're going to get 8 models, one of which will be Renly, and then all the various different characters of the Rainbow Guard. And then we're also going to get 4 Baratheon banners on the back of the unit, which will be some form of buff mechanic, we're guessing, in the same way the Kingsguard. I'm stoked. There's so many ways they can take this. Every character will come with an attachment card as well. So you're not just talking a new commander, you're talking bunch of attachments, you're talking special rules to the unit as well.
I'm seeing so many names in this paragraph here. So
yes.
And these characters also be, so they can be normal like warriors for Renly, but they can also be attachments as normal like as individual characters, correct?
Yeah.
Oh wow, okay, nice. Yeah, that's so much value in this box. Incredible.
Yeah, it really is. Not so much in 2021 in the newer balance of the game, but in 1.6, for example, when the Kingsguard were kind of like first released, it was a fantastic value for money box. You got all these characters. You got Joffrey himself with all the various different iterations of the attachments, or having as the Kingsguard. And back then, it really was like, you saw I think it was Preston Grenfield in competitive play. So it was even good, like we saw a lot of these attachments make top tier lists, which is lovely to see as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, as you say, 7 characters, including Renly himself. That's amazing. Right.
Yeah, that's incredible.
We'll move on to the last one, and I feel like this one's probably not a great one for you either, because it's a Targ box. It's like your mortal enemies getting all of the bonuses. So we have these 6 fellows here. I'm not sure. I quite like them. I think the color. I have to say, the renders of the dark plastic, I don't feel does them massive favors. But I do think the models are all right. I really like the Unsullied Captain, top middle. He's got quite an intimidating pose. I don't really want to meet him down a back alley.
Not at all.
But yeah, we've got a mixture here, including a character that's been missing from, in terms of a lore perspective, that people have been asking for quite a lot, which is Missandei, Daenerys' kind of like scribe or helper, which is, I'm guessing, that tiny little child model.
Yeah. I like Bottom right's nice.
Mhm.
I like that mask. Looks really cool. Top left is also good though. I like he's kind of like a larger fellow. He's got a nice, cool, round volume for his stomach to paint. So I only know about Targaryen what I hear through the person I play against the most, and that's Curtis.
Yeah.
And his perspective, and he has been experimenting lately, is that really Drogo is kind of their premier commander, and the rest aren't amazing. Do you share
Yeah.
that perspective?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at, I mean, when we look at things like data and stuff later on, yeah, Drogo is like competitive. He'll hold down top tables potentially, and he's comfortable in winning events. We have seen like Grey Worm do okay. We've seen a couple of others represent fairly well. We have not seen any standout commanders outside of Drogo though, and that's a shame. I mean, in some ways, everyone's kind of a little bit glad because Mother of Dragons was a plague onto the universe. So that disappearing was as a positive. But yeah, the commanders have been lackluster for Targaryen outside Drogo.
So they kind of need this, which is why I'm kind of bringing it up, right?
Yeah, they do. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also good. I mean, I'm always a big fan of attachment boxes or hero boxes in general because you also get NCU options, and NCU options is what makes your faction interesting because they add a very different flavor to the board and style that you want to play. I'm sure you're aware, like you with the Greyjoys, you have quite a few now because of the Greyjoy 2 box getting released.
Yes.
But prior to that, it was like you'd look at Eric and go, well, he's pretty good. You'd look at Wendemir and go, he's obviously good. And you look at Aeron and go, oh god. Aeron just makes me sad because he should work.
I can't wait to talk to you, like in more detail about this with you because I think I'm gonna have maybe a little bit of a different opinion. I don't think Aeron is necessarily terrible. Like in particular lists, I think he might work, but I can't wait to hear your opinion about that.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get onto it. Cool. So, in terms of characters, we've got Missandei as obviously the big one, the scribe. We've got Miri Mazdur, who, if anyone isn't sure about, this is the one that This is talking. I mean, actually, a topic you brought up earlier, Scott. In terms of like a negative mechanic. If anyone who doesn't know the lore very well, Miri Mazdur is the witch who essentially killed Drogo. So she's not Daenerys burns her alive to breed her dragons.
Yeah,
like
it's interesting. Yeah, she's here now in this army with in the same army as Drogo, the person that she kills in the story. Yeah, that's kind of interesting.
But going back to the negative mechanics you're talking about, potentially a negative mechanic there that we can bring in. Maybe she allows you to randomly birth a dragon mid-game. Please, for the love of God, no.
Yeah, like maybe you have to sack the attachment and like a few wounds off the unit, and you get a dragon. I mean, that'd be crazy.
That would be crazy. That would be amazing as well, though. Absolutely amazing. We also get Hizdazo Lorak, who is one of... God, my lore knowledge really stretched to the limits here. I think he's one of the leaders of either the Brazen Beasts or the other one, who I can never remember the name of, the tribes or the clans that develop inside the freed cities after Daenerys kind of captures them back. And we've also got Marslan and Shazak Mo Kandak. Again, those are the two commanders we've got there. Again, they're leaders of the various different tribes as well within that. So it's positive. I think a lot of people are keen because I think it means we are potentially going to get a cheap version of an Unsullied type unit in like the Brazen Beast or the long rumored and never revealed or never seen Gladiator unit for the Targaryens, which I think could be interesting. Apart from that,
I mean, I kind of agree with that. They do have a lot of, I don't know. Do you consider all the Stormcrow units to be like thematically Targaryen, or are they kind of added on?
Oh, for me, I feel like they're added on, right? They were Stormcrows were released in 1.6, and they all came out, and some of us bought boxes of them because neutral units. It's always useful to have things like that. They predominantly appeared in very competitive Stark lists, and they were very popular in 1.6 competitive Stark lists. Stormcrows basically made the backbone of the unit and the list. And then they released an update in 2021, and they basically said, "Oh, by the way, Stormcrows are now Targaryens."
Yeah. Oh, kind of weird. So it's good to maybe see some light at the end of the tunnel that they might get some cheaper infantry options, some more play styles for Targaryens in the future. That'd be cool.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's, and I think Targaryen players everywhere are a bit put off by that because it was like, oh, we instead of designing new units, we just gave you a bunch of stuff that already existed, and that always feels bad to anybody.
Yeah, definitely.
Imagine if I came around and was like, "Hey, Scott, you know, like cutthroats. Cutthroats are just in your faction now. You know."
Not okay.
No.
I mean, part of the reason why I only run Greyjoy and don't run neutrals is because I love that feeling of like playing an in-faction army, feeling specific and thematic. So like if I was a Targaryen player, I would hate that especially.
Yeah. A faction purist. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the 4 boxes we've now seen. Seen the models, we can see the unit descriptions, and we basically know at this point what we're expecting in the box for each. Of course, we have no idea what any of the rules actually are, but some pretty big hype there for Q3 for certainly those 3 factions. We are not, as far as I'm aware, expecting anything Greyjoy in the near future. We haven't had anything Greyjoy since Greyjoy Heroes 2, although arguably, I lie. Technically speaking, we've got Drowned Men who are coming out, are released, aren't released. Who knows?
Coming out, yes. Honestly, I feel like we have a lot of stuff for Greyjoy at the moment, and I guess there are 2 ways to balance a game. You could change the rules of the game, you can change like the models that currently exist in the game, or you could introduce like new mechanics and new units into the game, like via like new releases, which is much easier to do. But kind of feel like we have a lot of options that they're pretty good, but they might just need some tuning instead of kind of just piling more stuff on top. But I don't know what you think about that.
No, I agree. Sometimes like you say, there's 2 schools of thoughts about it. Really, we are in favor here of more regular updates. We worry here, obviously trying to create the community push A Song of Ice and Fire to get to as many people as we can. We would rather the game was updated and supported, maybe balance every 6 months. But we also know that there are a lot of players out there who don't like the amount of balance updates there are. 1 a year is sometimes too much. And for hobbyists and for people who are like generally lower on the play rate, I know for a fact, you wouldn't want to come across the game if you're only playing like once a fortnight to once a month, and then find out after 6 games the rules have changed again because you've barely even explored the commanders you've got.
Yeah.
So I can really see it from that end. But yeah, I do think for the more extreme players among us who are playing far too many games of it per week than we should, the balance gets a bit stale. But I actually don't think the balance for season 1 is stale yet. And I do think new releases, as you say, I do think new releases punctuate that. And if anything, like big, let's say, I don't know, Martells get released.
Maybe. I don't know. We saw a little release of Martells in the Discord, didn't we? Or was that fake?
Well, it depends which release you're talking about. There is the ever-growing April Fool's joke that Evan posted
Fool's
up.
joke.
That has. I have to admit, that is a meme that just keeps on giving and still gets spread around.
It's great.
But we did see, and you do actually touch on another piece of news. There was, for a brief period of time, somebody who posted a load of information on Martells. On Reddit.
Like actual?
Yeah, like actual information. It all got taken down very quickly because I think it's strictly speaking, it's a leak. Now, whether or not it's good, bad for the game health, whatever, The fact of the matter is, it was out there, it was put out there, and if something gets put out there, as we know full well, once it's out, it stays out, right? You can never delete anything from the internet.
Okay, so are you suggesting something right now?
Are you saying that, have I got copies of exactly what was posted?
I mean, that's exactly what I'm asking, but you put work.
Okay, all right. So I'm not going to dive too deep into this, partially because people don't know. Like, it's not 100% confirmed if this is real or not. I've spoken to the people that I know in the game who are within these systems who didn't leak it, by the way. They're not involved with the leak. They have seen these and they have said, yeah, that does actually look a little bit like it. There are rules missing from what has been seen. So yeah, they're all there. It's a bit like the 2021 leaks, if anyone remembers that. It's a little bit like that. Take them with a grain of salt, but they are out there. The most interesting thing, and this is going to be a completely new experience for you, Scott. They have an NCU commander coming out.
Oh, okay. So I heard something about Martell's having some kind of mechanic where like they could kill other NCU. I didn't hear about NCU commanders. That sounds super interesting.
So NCU commanders used to exist. In 1.6, they got rid of them after 1.6 because they were a plague unto the game, basically being that your NCU commander was your best commander, almost 100% of the time, because it was just a free NCU.
Oh, okay. It could never die either.
Yeah. So if I told you could have all your commanders, you could write exactly the same lists as you currently make, and then as your third NCU in each list, or take a 2 NCU list, and then you can just have Eric Commander for free as an NCU.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Why wouldn't you always do that? That does make sense.
Exactly. So obviously they were removed for balance reasons, thankfully. But the door was always open. You know, the design team have always decided to, open new avenues. But I think Mag, with the kind of like independent model who can also be a commander or not, really opened the door for them to explore that a lot more. And we see Doran. In case anyone hasn't seen the Martell box, it's the guy on the front in the wheelchair, who, it doesn't make much sense to be on a battlefield. He can be your commander as the head of House Martell, but he has an on-field commander that replaces him. His bodyguard takes his spot on the field, but he's an NCU and he costs 5 points as a commander to be an NCU, which I think is really good. So you're paying for the NCU, but getting a commander as well.
And some kind of representation on the game as well?
Yeah.
Okay.
His bodyguard, Ario Hotar, who is a guy with a big fuck-off axe.
Okay. But do we know what happens when Ario dies to the NCU yet, or no?
We don't.
Okay.
I actually...
Interesting.
Based on the rules here, Doran for 5 points allows Ario Hotar's unit as a replace zone effect. He can pivot then march or perform a retreat action. So if he's dead, his unit's dead, I'm guessing Doran doesn't really do much.
Right, yeah. You can take zones, but he doesn't get a special ability.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, no, it could be really interesting design philosophy. The other big kind of news, if you will, from this that we saw is that the tactics cards names are kind of dumb. They have such great card names as Sand Diplomacy.
Trade some sand for who knows what.
Peace in our time for sand. Insert Anakin I don't like sand meme here.
Nice.
They also have another card called Rising Temperature, which is a little bit thematic, but is not exactly very fun. And I believe the last one, which is truly brilliant is where is it? If I can find it. I think it's not on these ones, unfortunately. They do have another one which is truly awful. Oh, there you go. Dune Tactics.
Dune Tactics. All right.
There you go. Which immediately made me think, of course, Dune, the film that just came out. And
Right. Yeah. Someone just said in chat. I wish one was Desert Power, which is like a. Yeah, I love that movie, but of all the pieces of dialogue, that was certainly the weakest part. Desert Power. It just felt super lame.
Yeah. I mean, the other ones I can't really complain with, like unbowed, unbent, unbroken. Those are the house words in the lore, so that's fair enough. Superior positioning is a card that already exists, so I can't really complain there. I quite like Rhyonish Vengeance. Vengeance from the particular area of the area in which they live. That's their kind of quest card, basically, that we see.
Yeah.
So that's fine. No, I've got nothing wrong with those. And they come with Cunning Ploy in the base deck, which if you've played against any Tyrion, Cunning Ploy is a good card. So, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing how they change the game, because even introducing a new army with new mechanics can sometimes like force your opponents to try different lists, and that in and of itself can cause some kind of a meta shift. So it's going to be good to see how it works out.
The last part, which is I guess the big news for them, is that we see the 4-point version NCU, the non-commander version of Doran, brings a new tactic zone to the board in a similar way that Prayat Pri does. He has this thing where he gains points or tokens depending on which zones he takes, and he gets extra victory points if he manages to collect a certain number of tokens. That's pretty good.
What do you feel about mechanics like that award you victory points that your opponent can't get? Like, this is like a special thing to this particular faction.
I think you've got to be very careful.
Yes, I agree. I think personally, I just don't like it. Obviously, there's a way that it could be implemented that might work, but just at face value, I'm like kind of like not a fan of that. But I'll wait to see how it's actually kind of shakes out.
I think there are some out there, and like Drogo's card that gives you an extra point for killing someone, or if you don't, is it Drogo? So it might be Barry's. Barry has a card where you put it on, and if you kill them, you get an extra VP. But if they don't die, the person who gets the card or was attached to gets a VP. So you can have this kind of like gambit play where it's like, I don't want that unit to get involved, but I kind of want to kill them. And it's like, is it worth putting the VP on them to kill them to get this 2 VP? Or is it kind of like, oh, I put that card on them and they've run away. I just gave my opponent a VP. You know? That was a dumb.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah.
It seems interesting, but I feel like risk versus reward mechanics sometimes can feel like really swingy.
Yes.
Which when they don't happen, it feels bad for you trying to do that gambit, and when it does happen, your opponent's kind of like, well, that sucks because I couldn't do the same thing anyway. So it's like, here's free points for you in a way. Yeah, that's what I kind of feel.
Yeah, I feel like if it's balanced, well, and you know about it, and it has ways to stop it, I think that's fine. It becomes interactive then.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just as you say. I think there's these times where it's just kind of like it just happens, and that kind of sucks. All right, so all of that happened this week. The Martells are clearly down the line somewhere. We've seen that War Factory PL, the Polish distributor for the game, has actually got them in stock and has been kind of, for want of a better term, leaking them slowly to people. And when I mean leaking them slowly, I mean they've been showing us pictures of the boxes a lot and not actually any information. I'm guessing they're coming out soon. If Poland has them in hand and we're getting pictures like this appear regularly, then we are 100% going to have Martells, I would guess, in the next kind of 2 months.
Okay.
So
I wonder. I mean, like we have a big event coming up with nationals. Oftentimes, companies will pair events like that with cool announcements, maybe something like that. Like who knows?
yeah, that is actually the rumor, is that potentially it has happened before, that the winner of Gen Con actually won a box of Targaryens, I think it was, when they were released, or Baratheons it might have been. So there may be a box of Martells at Gen Con that goes to the winner. Which, hey, that is a good prize.
Yeah, that's
Um,
fun. Love
yeah.
that.
So I would expect to see these within the next couple of weeks. Spoiled, even if it is spoiled in Polish and translators working hard day and night to fix it. Right. That is all the news. Are you happy we went through all of that news?
I am. So I'm curious if you were to have like someone who'd have like more of an opinion about this stuff. Does this segment normally take like much longer? I feel like you were kind of carrying it there for me.
No. I mean, you did your bit. You're
All right.
having your opinions there. Sometimes we may take several hours, but that's because me and Carlo just chat shit and don't say anything productive. I don't really know why anyone listens. So no, absolutely fine. Right. We have to move on to the main segment of today, which is talking about you, Scott. What's your name? What's your favourite hobbies? And which dating sites do you use? No, wait, hang on, that's not the right ones.
Okay. Yeah, whoa. Didn't discuss that in the pre-roll.
No, go on. Let's tell us a little bit about your story with the Song of Ice and Fire.
Absolutely.
And also just like where you're at with it. Go on.
Yeah, sure. So I started playing maybe like a year and a half ago. I can't remember exactly, but my childhood friend, moved up to where I live in Minnesota. He made a kind of a big life change, and he was kind of living in my house for a year. He's moved out since then. We were wanting to find a game to play together, and kind of going over various things I had in my closet, and I knew of A Song of Ice and Fire, and I kind of forgotten about it because generally speaking, I don't like games that limit the design scope to what someone else controls. In this case, George R.R. Martin. Like if he stops making content, this game has no ceiling. Well, it has a ceiling, but it's limited, right? They don't control that ceiling. So generally speaking, I kind of just avoid games like that, like even if they are good. Or I used to, I should say. But I told my friend Curtis that there is a game based on Game of Thrones, or Song of Ice and Fire, and he's a massive fan of that franchise, and said, "Let's do it." I had nothing to lose, and so I said, "Sure, absolutely." And so we kind of got into it and started playing then. And at that point in my gaming career, I had not played a miniature war game like really consistently for like many, many years. I'd played maybe like, I don't know, like 1 to 3 games a year for, I don't know, like 3 or 4 or 5 years. So it's like kind of like really on the down low. So I started to play Song of Ice and Fire with him. We both really loved the game, and so we started to play it more regularly, kind of like finding really any time that we could play it. And that has gone on for like a year and a half. And so we started playing like maybe like, I don't know, like 3 or 4 games a week, and now we're kind of both settling at like 1 game a week. But like for someone like me to keep that schedule up for like a year and a half, like until this point, it's like kind of a testament to how good this game is. He started on Targaryen, I started on Greyjoy. He plays Free Folk as well, and I also dabble in Stark. So we both have two armies at this point. But I'm I should say really enjoying this game quite a bit, and have been for a long time. Where I'm at with the game right now, I think in my last 10 matches I'm like 2-8. It's bad. I had a bit of a, not a rant, but like a brain dump in the Pike channel on the Discord server.
That.
Did you see that? Okay.
This morning, right? This morning. Was it your late night? I have no idea.
Yeah. It was last night, Sunday. I'm like, man, lost another game. This sucks. So I was kind of like, I wanted to share some thoughts about like maybe some different ways we could play. But yeah, so I play Greyjoy, and I think for like 95% of my gaming career, I've always played a 3 NCU list. Which I think is pretty normal. Is that correct?
I wouldn't actually. I would say it's not necessarily normal. I would think it's a lot of people say it's like more competitive. Generally speaking, but there are a lot of people who do play a lot of 2 NCUs. You just don't hear about it that often. But yeah, I'd say it's fairly normal.
Okay. Am I seeing Greyjoy there at the bottom of the list? I know
You
Evan was
are.
talking about it. Damn.
You are really seeing Greyjoys at the bottom of the list. You are currently see. I'm not going to do this, right? I don't know how many pieces. I know you do have an account and have used the site before.
Oh yeah. I mean, pull it up. I don't care.
All right, are we going to name and shame at this point?
I mean, like I saw your MMR. It was disgustingly high. Like mine is not that high, but I find the most people that I play with aren't super interested in keeping track of stats, but it's definitely not 1900 like your lord.
Hey, you are, and I'm unfortunately going to say this, Scott. You are fractionally below average. No, you are basically. I mean, you're basically average at this point with the rating that you've got, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with your rating. Don't get rating envy. It really doesn't matter.
Oh yeah,
it is just a number.
I'm not too worried.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I've been trying to think of different ways to play, like I guess for my own like personal game, and so I've done a lot of 3 NCU lately. So I've been trying to do 2 NCU lists. I heard a theory once upon a time that like with aggressive lists, maybe you want more, boots on the ground, like actual units on the fields to be aggressive with, versus maybe just kind of picking up a 3rd NCU slot that isn't always the greatest, just to kind of like have another activation to kind of like wait to see what your opponent does. And that kind of makes sense to me. And so I've been trying out a couple 2 NCU lists lately. Not with the greatest results, but more experimentation is needed still.
No, it's fine. It is generally speaking, like when we talk about competitive and good list building, we talk about 3 NCUs as being a key point. When we first started stats, myself and Carlo played a lot of 3 NCU. That's what we played here in the UK. And we both firmly believed it was a better way of playing, made stronger lists. And then when COVID obviously hit and the international meta with TTS kind of really kicked off properly, and Stats was able to kind of like analyze data as well, we basically showed that at the time it was like a 66%, it was like 2/3 win rate for 3 NCU in the 3 versus 2 meta, if you will. So we kind of solved that, being like 3 is generally better. But, as you say, there is room for 2 NCU lists. Generally speaking, we see 2 NCU lists from the more powerful factions doing well. Specifically, Night's Watch, Free Folk, and Baratheons can run fairly comfortable 2 NCU lists. It can happen in Targaryen. I know that a couple of the US players, specifically Craig Grooney Groenhagen, he runs a 2 NCU Targaryen list, which he's done quite well with. I think he's taking that to nationals as well.
Nice.
But yeah, it's a real mix. I think the truth of the matter is that Greyjoys down in the dumps there, I think they'd find it harder to run 2. But on the plus side, you are picking up an activation on the field for that. It's like you're buying like a unit of bowmen or a unit of trappers, whereas a lot of people, they're not even buying a unit when they lose that 3-4 point NCU. Whereas at least you've got that option.
Yeah. So I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Nothing has really changed with Greyjoy, other than we got new stuff, of course.
Yeah.
But when did we start to see this lowering in stats? Is it because other people have gotten better? Is that the problem we're seeing right now?
Partially that. I actually think a lot of it is to do with the appearance of other things within the meta, and certainly the prevalence of certain archetypes. Baratheons getting better, specifically when we talk about Stannis side Baratheons. I don't know if you had any chance to play against Stannis Baratheons much.
Yeah, maybe once or twice. Not actually as many Renly, mostly Stannis where I'm playing.
And you're probably getting burnt off the board by Melisandre, Lightbringers, and that kind of.
Gosh, dude, Lightbringers. who wrote the rules for that unit? Like, what's wrong with you, man?
Yeah, your morale 7 and morale 8 units just being like, take a minus. They failed. Those guys over there need to take a test on 10. What?
Brutal. It's brutal.
Just literally running away. Yeah, so I mean, the prevalence of those things, and then what we've also seen is like Baratheons coming up as well. This kind of like people just running a bunch of champions of the stag and running them across the board at you and go, I've got a 2+ armor, deal with it. And people don't. because it's
Yeah,
hard.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, I think a lot of it is that partially. I also think it's unfortunately a natural conclusion of where free folk have gone to as well. Greyjoys for a long period of time was seen as kind of like a soft counter to free folk, but as you know full well now, free folk trappers with the auto damage like in 12. I popped in on the stream you were playing the other day, and I looked at your force and was like, "Yep, most of his units are on half health, and some of those are archers that haven't even been attacked. They've been doing the attacking and losing wounds because of it."
Yeah, that is a bit rough. That game actually came down to I had to table him to win, but he had enough points to like run around and eventually win the game. So it ended up being pretty close because I think Greyjoy healing can be quite insane if you get the right cards at the right time. But yeah, that the trappers with making you take damage and then swinging at you again, like it's something to be feared for sure.
Yeah, you actually nailed a part of the problem as well. I think in what you said there, in that the deck and the healing is really quite good if the cards come up in the right order.
Yes.
If the cards
Let's
come
get
up
into
in
what's
the
wrong
wrong
with
order.
Greyjoy right now because I'm down. Let's talk about Greyjoy the entire time. I'm ready to go.
No, we can do this. We can do this. I'm sure we can spend the next 8 hours talking Greyjoys. No.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. So I mean, let's have a little look. I have played some Greyjoys. You'll be glad to know. I did my prep, right? And I will show my profile off here for the second because I don't disagree with you when I show you this, right? That is
Eric.
3 games
Iron
of Eric
Maker?
on the bounce. Yeah.
What are you doing? That's the worst commander.
Oh, because I really want to see how bad he was. Yeah, he's trash.
Yeah. I haven't ever used him a single time, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts.
Oh no! My thoughts are he's trash. Don't try him, Scott.
Okay, good.
No, you know what it actually is? He's not terrible. He actually has some interesting things like spending a pillage to auto pass a panic is quite nice. Spending a pillage to block D3 in a melee attack for free kind of thing is nice. His attack card for I think it's like precision, vicious, and rerolls depending on what pillage you spend is quite nice. The problem is you don't generate nearly enough pillage with Greyjoys at the moment. You can't kill things.
It kind of seems like when you have it, it's like you kind of almost get too much of it, and then when you don't have it, it's like really hard to get. There's like kind of like this tipping point, and so spending it unless you're like really sure you can get it back does feel kind of bad sometimes.
Yeah, the first game I played, I have been playing Reapers, who are terrible.
Yeah, they're bad, but they got that 6 morale, which is kind of nice. Yeah, they're okay.
Hey, 8-point Reapers. I ran Reapers with the 2-point Carl in them for the +2 morale, and the auto wound, so I knew I was going to get that vicious panic test off.
Oh, hey, that's not a bad idea. Okay, nice.
Yeah. It's an 8-point investment, and it's probably an 8-point investment into something that sucks. But
yeah, maybe.
But it is fun. And it also unlocks what I consider, which is really important, with a 7 dice attack profile on 3+. The auto wound takes you up to a potential 8 plus the panic, and then you can also get 2 extra wounds from the 2 pillage. Means that you can actually max out at 12 wounds. I think it's 13 wounds. So with a Warcry setup, it's not unreasonable you can one-shot a unit.
Yes, and this is actually kind of an interesting like element of the game because generally speaking, like I would say probably like 95% of most units like have no way of one-shotting a unit. So when it does happen, it's like a huge advantage because you can't get any kind of healing train rolling.
Yeah.
And you're like on top for like that point, almost moving forward. So that actually my most recent game, I had a unit of Iron Makers with Balon Greyjoy. I get one shot by Knights of Casterly Rock. Like, when does that ever happen? But that kind of just ruins the game for the rest of the game when that happens. So it's worth investing in that maybe for that kind of cool experience.
Was that quite late in the game, or did that happen quite early?
That happened turn 2.
Can I ask?
It was bad.
Did they have any pillage tokens on them, or were they?
So okay, let me explain the full story.
Go
No,
on.
no pillage tokens.
Oh, okay.
So I was a turn 1 against a unit against an army with 2 cav units, and generally
Mhm.
how I like to set up for turn 2 is I want to give him 2 charge options. That if he takes one, I can take the other one, and I'm not losing out necessarily on like getting charged. Like he's gonna have one cav unit with benefits that gets charged off, but I'm gonna be able to take the benefit away from the other one.
Mhm.
I gave him
Okay.
2 options. I gave him Vic with Silenced Men as an attachment. With Baron was kind of sitting there buffing that unit. Then I had Iron Makers. I thought the Iron Makers could live through a charge from Knights of Castle Rock, but they have Sundering built in, which I forgot about. And then he also War Cried them as well for that vulnerability.
Yeah.
And he played Hear Me Roar as well, which so you got me in one activation. So okay, I will say maybe not super lucky. He set up for it. It was good. I also kind of forgot about some of those mechanics, so it felt bad. But yeah, good thing to remember when your opponent has that capability. Or otherwise, you're kind of on the back foot for the rest of the game.
Yeah, I mean that's a not only is that your commander, but that's a key key unit in the list. It's probably like outside of the Victarion Silencemen, it's the most expensive unit you're probably running.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's sadness.
Yeah, it definitely was sadness, 100%.
Where are the Greyjoy cavalry? Right, where's the light cavalry Greyjoys you could have just sent in and taken the charge instead of Baron?
Yes, yes, please.
Yeah, I mean, it is a thing. It does happen, and yeah, you're right in saying like in terms of one shot, it is actually how competitive games are also kind of like played around a lot of the time. So we look at like Night's Watch Ranger Hunters with the charge, retreat off, shoot you. That's very popular in just kind of killing anything that hasn't got good stats with 2 massive attacks. A lot of free folk chariots with there's too many. They just kind of come in and go, poof, take that in the face. Here's a -6 panic test with +3 wounds. Oh, you rolled a 3. You just took 6 wounds from a panic test. Get wrecked. So yeah, popular strategies, and yeah, when it happens, it sucks. I do think that Greyjoys suffer from a lot of that. I do. And without having access, like you were saying before, about if you're going down the route of like faction purists, it's difficult to really make the Greyjoys work in your favor, if any of that kind of comes up. And certainly, I don't know if it's true round about your parts, flayed men are quite popular.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think that's probably true across the globe.
Yes.
Yes, they are a very good. What are they? 8 points, 8-point cav unit.
Yeah.
Yeah. No denying that. Vicious and IP put together, crit blow on the charge, 3-up save. Like, yeah, it's a great unit for sure.
I'm guessing you've been done dirty by them as well.
I mean, yeah. So my friend that I play against, who has Targs, I think typically runs a unit of flayed men, but he's kind of been bouncing back and forth between a couple of the other cav options in Targaryen, which I think he's kind of rediscovering are actually pretty good. Point comparatively, and also because like his list kind of went up in points a little bit because he ran Tycho Nestoris, so that 1 point increase kind of makes you reconsider like if certain units are really worth it if you wanted to keep Tycho around and things like that. So yeah, I've definitely had my fair share of dealing with flayed men, as I'm sure most people listening and watching have.
Oh, 100%. They're probably the most Drogo flayed men is probably one of the most ubiquitous combos.
Yeah, I'm getting a little PTSD right now just hearing that spoken out loud.
We'll move on quick. Shuffle them under the carpet.
Please.
So in terms of, it's interesting. So if we look at the stats, their play rate, they're typically run at 8 activations with like a 5/3. The most, this is without Victarion, but we see typically the second most played system is a 4/3 with a 4+1. So that's a pseudo activation in Relentless in Victarion. They are the most popular lists as the 8s. And if we actually look at the win rate, it is the 4+1 and 3 NCUs that's the most winning of them, if you will. But the 9 activation, running 5 activations and a pseudo activation and 3 NCUs, is kind of comparing in the win rates quite well. So again, we look at like the 5/3 split with 8 activations. Again, we see a decent win rate. all posting above 50%, which is quite interesting. The moment you drop down to 7 activations, your win rate drops like 10%.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that never really feels good. I know a couple people I was speaking with were trying to make like elite Greyjoy like work really well, but that it always kind of struggles against higher activation count armies.
Yeah. It is interesting because we only show the data for the 5 most popular of these, because in theory there are loads of like offshoots, but
right.
2 NCUs rarely makes it in, and the 5-2 is a 38% win rate, so that's pretty bad.
I'm curious. Have you ever discussed like the volume of data that you have to get these stats? Are we talking hundreds of games, thousands of games?
So
what are we looking at?
It depends. So each faction, we do sometimes have to discuss it. We've been collecting, and I've got it written down here somewhere. Last week, I set Carlos some homework to tell me roughly how many games there were on the site. As of data that we currently analyze, so that's Season 1 and Season 1 and 2021, so about a year and a half now of data. We have over 10,000 games. I think it's like 15,000 games that we're
That's
analyzing.
awesome.
Yeah. So it is a lot of games. Now, that's a lot of games, but of course only some of those are applicable to Season 1. Season 1's only been going for like kind of like 5 months at this point, 5-6 months. So some of that is going to be like older data that is less relevant. But so, I mean, you can see all the games played here. For Season 1, Greyjoys have played just under 3,500 games. It's like 1,500, not 3.5. Jesus, I can't read numbers.
Yeah, I mean that's a good amount of data to be able to draw some I think some more serious conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
Which is that was kind of always my my question. With like a game that's not super popular, you have like a website like yours, which is like community run, and I would say most casual players probably aren't going to like want to like record like stats, because I don't know why, but they just don't want to whenever I ask them. I was kind of curious like what kind of data you were actually working with, but that is like a sufficient amount of data. So I mean, congrats, that's really cool.
It's interesting you mentioned that in terms of like getting communities and things to submit. I think one of the big things we always struggle with is perception. And we kind of talked about it earlier in terms of like ELO, MV or whatever. But one of the big things, you said it, people don't like recording games because they don't like the number going up or down, or they don't want the kind of like that side of it. And for us, it's like, I literally record every game I played. Like I played 3 games of Eric Ironmaker. He's goddamn trash. And I was running him to like Jon Snow and Donnell as well, like 3 Night's Watch games on the bounce, which is like the worst possible matchup. And I'm like, I'll record them, and I always will record them, not because I care about my number that much, but because I want to record data.
Right.
And that for me is the most important thing, is that the game is recorded, so the stats reflects my play experience because my data is in there. And I think that that's always a big thing when people say, oh, it doesn't reflect my experience. Well, I always say to them, well, if you add to it, then your experience will be included. And, it will hopefully change if what you're doing is working and consistently. The data will reflect that, and you'll earn a lot of points from it. And you'll be regarded as, hey, this guy's actually doing well with this thing that we think is crap. What's he doing interestingly with it? Through to, you've actually added your data to the pile. Maybe Greyjoys really are that bad. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. I'm curious. I have more questions then. So
Okay,
when you're playing against another person, like, what's your sales pitch for getting them to record stats? Is it kind of like I'm not going to play against you unless I can record stats because of X, Y, Z, or do you kind of like massage it in a different way?
This is hard because a lot of the community in the UK, stats is relatively ubiquitous now.
Okay, great.
Which is like every event that we're aware of, any large event, aside from like 1 or 2 stores that we know of, runs their events through stats. A load of the community does, so it's not really an issue. But when we have done it before, I would always say, look, I want to record the game on stats so I can add to the data. Do you mind doing that? Most of the time, people will say yes. Some people will say no. And I say, look, It's not for ranking or anything like that. It's purely so we can add to the data and like get that thing across. Usually people are pretty good with it, and I think once people have experienced it for the first time, especially with tournaments, because the idea is that it really helps with tournament running. I think once people have broached that and kind of like gone through that way, I think it really opens the door. And I think the other thing as well is that it's not actually for competitive play really. We designed it with the express intent so that people on the kitchen table or with their friends at home or on a stream can play on stats and can record games if they want to without having to say, look, this is a competitive game or not. That's just a game of A Song of Ice and Fire. That game is just as important to those two players as the top table at Nationals is.
Yeah, absolutely. And also it helps CMON. It helps CMON knows how balanced their game is. So I felt like they would love this system, be able to see like on paper, like how they think their rules are actually functioning in the real world.
Yes.
So like there are so many benefits to this, but I mean, let me just fire back a little bit. Like there's a lot of anxiety that goes into playing a miniature war game just in the first place. Because I've invested all this time into painting my models, into setting up this game, and to finding time to go play and all these things. And obviously people who aren't like maybe familiar with like MMR and like various video games and things like that, to have it like on paper and like for everyone to see publicly just kind of adds that anxiety, right? So
I agree.
maybe that's why. Yeah, so you already have thought about this likely, yeah.
Yeah, that is a thing, and it is something that obviously, ultimately, it's something that we can't do anything about. And what I mean by that is like it's not something that we don't think about. It's not something we ignore. But the difficult thing for us is that we need those. We need that information in order to actually do proper ELO calculations. I think the big thing is that for us is that number really doesn't tell me about you as a person. It just tells me how you are performing at A Song of Ice and Fire at this current time. And
right, yeah.
You know, and actually the big thing, we talked about your ranking kind of like being average, if you will.
Sure.
The thing is, like, most of the people you've recorded games against are in your local community. And if you keep playing those people in the same local community, the ELO in that local community doesn't change. So it will just go backwards and forwards between you. And you can, like, in that local community, you can look at just your stats and go, like, I don't know, let's just pretend that Curtis is at the top for the moment and say, like, Curtis is at, like, 1,600 and you might at 1,500. And let's say Evan's crap. Let's say he's 1,400. If you just guys keep playing, and Evan gets better, or Curtis runs like a worse faction, starts losing some games, or you decide to go back to 3 NCUs and your win rate goes up, that ELO will balance out, and you'll go like, actually, Scott's now the best at 1,600, and Curtis has maybe dropped down to 1,500, and maybe Evan's still shit at 1,400.
Poor Evan. I'm definitely the worst one of those three. So
no, don't put yourself down. I can't put his guest down. That would be terrible. You're great, Scott. Keep it up.
Thank you. Keep it up. Keep losing. Yeah, I will. Don't worry.
Yeah, going well, champ. So I think that's the big thing. You are right though with the anxiety. It isn't something I would ever broach just like as if like it's going on here. Deal with it. And I would always make sure that people feel comfortable with it.
Yeah.
And you are right. I think you've
it's
got
a culture
to...
thing, right?
Yeah, 100%, 100%.
If we kind of teach what you're teaching us right now to people we play, it's like this is good for the game. I don't want it for myself. I want it because it's going to help like people who need to know the information be equipped to make the right choices to make this game more enjoyable for everybody. And so you got to put on like your salesman pants a little bit, but I mean, that is a really compelling argument for why anyone should always record stats. But, it's not going to convince everyone, but I definitely agree with that.
It is a big thing. There are people in chat saying, is there a possibility to split like casual and ranked? We've done this before. We actually did this on the original site version when it went live all the way back in the many horrible days of COVID lockdowns, and that actually caused more problems than it was worth from our end in terms of analyzing it, but also from a perspective of like people rated ranked games as more important than casual, which kind of goes away from the very ethos of what we consider as like a game of A Song of Ice and Fire is a game of A Song of Ice and Fire. like you don't just look at competitive games when working out the balance of the game. The fact that Eric sucks and no one runs him at a tournament, and when he gets played on like the kitchen table and he doesn't do well on the kitchen table, like that's relevant. So yeah, I think that's the big thing. But yeah, uh, it could be a thing. It could be a thing in the future that we would potentially hide people's names from the site. You challenge them, like they'd give you a username or whatever, but they would appear anonymously on the rankings, so you couldn't necessarily see them. So even if their number goes up or down, it doesn't matter because there's a bunch of people called anonymous.
Yeah.
So that
I
might
don't
be
know.
a thing.
That might not really get a lot of people to use it that aren't using it. So if it's
Yeah.
currently functioning the way you want to function, the way you want it to function, then I would maybe keep it. Paul asked an interesting question. Weekly club games are often people testing lists in combination. Would people want to submit those games? And I would say absolutely.
Yeah.
As long as you're still trying, like that's valuable data for a different Eric Ironmaker commander list or a 2 NCU list. You kind of want to see that. You like people
Yeah.
think that Eric is bad, but you want the data to show that he's also bad, you know?
Yeah, and list testing is exactly what like this is great for. If we only ever showed top table tournament games, you'd have very skewed data that would be almost worthless. Like it wouldn't actually be worth the paper it was written on. And it's actually one of the big criticisms that when myself and Carlo look at game analysis in other tournaments, they look at who was in the top 4, and they only ever look at the top 4. And actually, what they don't realize is like in 8 through to 16, in all of these like 64 to 100 player tournaments, 8 through to 16 is like always solidly one faction, and their average is like 7.5 ranking, and you're like, how is a faction that's never won a tournament placed so highly regularly, whereas this faction that comes first also comes last. So
yeah,
consistency matters, I think. But yeah. All right then. So we've kind of transitioned into the site. That was very well done of you, Scott. You're pretty good at this.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I love the site. I use it all the time. Yeah, I'd love to talk about it with you.
So I did say there was a bit of a surprise thing based on the Cool Minis or Not forum, and I know someone was asking about it before. Are we going to do a Cool Mini or Not segment today? And we are. So I'm going to surprise you with this.
All right.
This is the surprise segment. So to set you up, Scott, you will remember the CMON forums of old, the Cool Mini or Not.
I posted on them.
Yeah, brilliant, right? And you'll know that your heart sank massively when you'd go onto the ratings and you'd see people rating out of 10, and you'd get like 2 out of 10 could be this, 1 out of 10 could be better. Yeah?
Yep.
Yeah. Did you ever score over a 5?
Oh man, I can't remember. It's probably been like 7 or 8 years since I ever posted something on there, so I can't actually remember. Maybe I can remember my login info.
Oh god, hey, if you do, that would be amazing. But you know how harsh it is, right?
Absolutely.
We saw Golden Demon winners on there getting like 1s and 2s, and you're like, what? This is like almost a perfect model. So we like to do it here with images that have been submitted from the community to us. We like to give them a ring round. Now, Carlo always gives 0s because he is in true Cool Mini or Not forum spirit, regardless of how good they are. You can choose what you rate them. You have all the power in your hands today, Scott.
Okay, out of 5.
Out of 10. You have out of 10.
Out of 10.
We do out of 10.
Yeah. What does Carlos give it?
Carlo always gives 0, regardless. So
savage.
Right, we'll dive in. I've got like a selection, I think it's like 6 images of the unit that's been painted up, so I can flip between them. But let's zoom out.
My login does work, and I do see some of my submissions. My highest one was,
wow.
I don't know, maybe like 6 or 7 years ago, and it has a 7.4.
Whoa, 7.4. That's pretty impressive.
Thank you. Here, just to prove it, I can.
Just drop us over a link, and I'll throw it up on screen. This is something that he totally did and submitted through totally legit means, and not something that he's just taken a photograph and pretended to post up right now. Oh yeah, I think I've seen it. Is this on one of your like montage things somewhere?
Possibly.
I think I've seen this model before.
Yeah, this is for an old Reddit competition, but yeah, posted back in 2016.
It is pretty nice. and that only got a 7.5.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to say how good it is. I think it's fairly obvious how good that is.
Oh, thank you.
In comparison to my painting, you got more than one color on that.
Hey.
All right then. So let's have a look. So this unit was submitted by. He submits so much stuff to us to review almost weekly. It's crazy. Lucas Aurelius, Luke from the US. So this unit here. I'll send you a link so you can see all of these pretty things up close, Scott, and you can break them down in your own time. This is a unit of the Karstark.
Brigands?
Not the Brigands, no. I can't for the life of me remember what the second half of the name is. There you go, I'll have to find it out very quickly. It's Karstark Loyalists. There we go.
Loyalists.
Wow. See how often I see them on the table. So, what do you think of these guys here? What's your opinion? And of course, any tips? I know you're pretty good at this whole painting thing, so.
Yeah. Okay, so am I rating this like I'd be rating it on Cool Mini or not? Is that the scope?
Yeah. The scope is Cool Mini or not.
Okay. Out of 10 for it's always so hard because I need to explain I need to hedge a little bit. So if we are like considering, how this unit compares to like maybe a unit entry in a competition, like this would not stand a chance. And it does not mean that it's not painted well. For an army, this is exceptional. Like if this is an army painting judgment, I'd give this easily 8, 7.5, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
For a competition, I might give it a 3. Because there are a lot of things to work on. But the question you got to ask yourself as an army painter is like, do I want to like really kind of just take all those details super seriously and spend a ton of time painting, a unit? Like this guy's already gone above and beyond because he did freehand, or he or she did freehand on that banner. Like that's absolutely crazy. Maybe on the shield there as well. So like so much extra credit is going into this unit already that makes it look phenomenal on the table. That is it worth discussing it like as a competition painting entry? So I will settle in the middle. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10, averaging those two scores.
That is very generous of you, Scott. That is very
generous. Oh, what are you going to give it?
I mean, if I base it on what I paint and how I paint and what I like to see against, like on the table, as you say, not competition level, because as you say, it's competition level. You've been there. You've been through the ringer. It's ridiculous, the kind of like categorization and the way what they expect.
Yeah.
I would actually probably give this a facing me a 7. As you were kind of saying, like it's part of a unit, and he does paint his entire armies like this, which is kind of crazy.
Oh man.
Yeah, he's very committed. Yeah, I'd probably give it like a 7 or 8. But in honor of Carlo, I will give it a 0. So yeah, it's lovely, isn't it? Lovely unit.
It looks really good. I love people that base the movement tray the same as the bases on the models. It just looks so awesome as a unit. And like I can't really talk at all because while I do have, I don't know, maybe like 15 Greyjoy models painted at this point, I don't have a full unit painted at all. And so this looks really nice and actually encourages me to actually get off my ass and paint a full unit.
I have to admit, it's pretty bad for someone who's known for their painting prowess and skills.
Hey, I paint slowly, all right?
Actually, I can call you out on that. You don't. It takes you like 30 minutes to paint a Greyjoy miniature? I know that because you did a video on it.
Yes, I can't paint some pretty quickly, for sure.
No. Yeah, I know. I'll be honest. You've obviously got other projects as well. It's not just these guys you're working on. And I can imagine, as much as painting is part of the hobby and you enjoy it, I can imagine as much of it is sometimes a bit of a chore.
Yeah, it can be. At one point in my YouTube career, it was a bit of a chore. But I think that I have discovered a way to be able to do the job YouTube without impacting the hobby of painting a ton, which actually is a really good thing because it used to not work out that way. And so I definitely there are times when I paint in my free time and it's enjoyable. Yeah, that's a good thing for me, fortunately.
No, it's always good to find the balance.
Yeah,
And the balance is obviously different for everybody, but I know you've got home life and other things you want to do. Playing A Song of Ice and Fire, of course, you know.
absolutely, absolutely. Loose, you mean A Song of Ice and Fire?
Um, I didn't say that. I said play. I said play. I have hope.
You're right. You're right. Thank you. That's what I need. That's what I need right now.
Hope and prayers. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Sending from the UK. So, well, fantastic. Thank you very much for rating that. I'm sure Luke will be massively happy with that. A solid 5 from yourself. You know,
Absolutely.
it will mean a lot to him.
I'm glad. I'm glad.
Let's move on to, I guess, the last segment of today, tournaments. Now, I want to ask your experience. You were at one of the regionals up in your area in Minnesota. What was that like?
It was a learning experience.
Okay.
I had played in 2 tournaments before that, so now I'm up to 3.
Mhm.
And the previous tournaments, I had placed moderately, 4th and then 3rd. And this one, I did very, very poorly. I lost all 3 games because I was really trying to force something without thinking about it. And I have it gave me kind of a realization about the game that I want to run by you, and I want to hear if you think like the same truth that I experienced.
Okay.
And that's that in the game of A Song of Ice and Fire, if you want to win, there are certain like elements that need to kind of fall into place. And one of those things is I feel like your card draw, your deck needs to be strong. Like you need to be getting the cards you want when you need them, or they need to be valuable just at any time in the first place. Or you need some way of manipulating that if you can't guarantee it. You need to have a list that has an idea, a thing it's good at, and you need to work on that idea and make sure it's actually happening. Like you can't just like passively win a game of A Song of Ice and Fire. And then your stats, your technique, your tactics needs to be good. Like your idea of how the game should work and stuff like that. And so I think those 3 things are really important pillars in a game. And the one thing I learned was I was running a Euron list in Reapers with Silenced Men, trying to do a panic thing. And every time I played the game, I was always deploying them kind of far away from each other. So I was never like investing in the thing that my list is supposed to be good at, like causing lots of panic damage. And so I kind of felt like, okay, even if it's not strategically advantageous for me to have these units next to each other, maybe I should just always do that so that my list can function the way it's supposed to function. So I lost all 3 of my games, and it was sad. But I think I learned a valuable lesson pending your thoughts.
No, everything you said there does kind of like ring true. There's you say the card draw and the order of things coming up, and to some extent, I'd also put dice rolling into that as well. It is a dice game.
Of course, absolutely.
That the luck side of it is somewhat mitigated when you talk about like being able to search for certain cards or knowing which ones to discard and things like this, because there's no point keeping them in hand. But yeah, in general, I believe that the 3 pillars that you've said are true. I think a big thing when it comes down to the list, you are right, your list has to have an idea, but also I think what's very important is understanding what you're likely to face. And we joke about it and we talk about it and we mention it relatively often. One of the things that's actually very, very important is knowing what your opponent does. I'm not expecting you to know literally everything, but having a good knowledge of your opponent's deck and knowing at the list building phase, well, if they play this card, what happens? How does that impact me? I think is very important. I've done more recently a couple of studies on this because I come at it from a free folk perspective. And I think the logic works for Greyjoys as well to some extent. So I asked myself a lot of the time, what is the implications when playing against a certain faction of me taking a certain type of action? So let's take a ranged attack as the particular study that I did. So I'd go through the deck and I would look at what happens if I make a ranged attack on this army. And I create a list of things. And I go, right, well, that list is actually quite short. Or in some cases, the list is non-existent. It's just a ranged attack. There are no negatives coming back at me that can happen. The only possible thing that can happen from this result is I do damage to you, or I don't. And that's not a bad thing for me if I don't do damage, if I'm willingly taking that on, knowing that there's a possibility of no damage. There's not going to be some other negative. So that's kind of one of the things I look at, and I do that for a lot of actions. And then it's about aligning my list when it comes to thinking a lot of those moving parts to interact with as few of those options my opponent has as possible. So, for example, Greyjoys, right? And it's a big issue in the Greyjoy deck. 100% massive issue. A lot of what you do is start of turn triggers, or when you activate triggers. And a lot of the when you activate ones are very heavily based around being engaged. So if you aren't engaged, and I can't really stop start turns, that's just a thing that happens. But if I make you want to make more than one, maybe that's a good choice. If I can limit when I play against you those options, I'm already in a driving seat for the game because I don't have to worry about those as often.
Okay, yeah. You're limiting your opponent's options for like recourse, like coming back at you by like creating lists of like things they can do like mentally whenever you give them the opportunity to do those things.
Yes.
It's a pretty interesting way to look at the game, actually.
And then when I do that, like I the study I did specifically on ranged attacks, because I personally think that ranged attacks at the moment are one of the most powerful sections of the game. Purely because the recourse when I did the study is relatively limited. If you look at it, the list that I generated, if I found it here, Starks specifically, basically Greyjoys, except what is dead may never die, but we don't really count that. But Starks and neutrals literally don't do anything. There's nothing in those decks except like Asher 2-point attachment and Brynden cavalry attachment with Sentinel that react. And we don't see that version of Asher very often, and we don't see the attachment Brynden very often. So I really don't have to worry too much about anything. Starks, Greyjoys, and neutrals, I can shoot all day long. They won't do anything bad back to me. For Lannisters, it's things like Lannister Supremacy. Well, I can play around that. I know where that is on the board. I don't have to shoot the units that have that if I don't want to. That's an active choice. The list gets a lot longer when you look at other factions, and it's interestingly, basically the power level of the factions typically indicates the number of responses. So something like Night's Watch has quite a lot of responses to that ranged attack. Baratheons have quite a lot of responses to that ranged attack. And then we look at the power ratings and we see that Night's Watch is number 1 and Baratheon are number 3 and they're all posting good win rates. I wonder why that is. So yeah,
not hard to find value in their deck at any point in the game, maybe.
Yeah,
is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, exactly. The value can be generated through multiple ways, whereas against Greyjoys, I have a navigation path around that, and it even gets worse for Greyjoys because, like, for Free Folk, I don't want to be engaged with you because it activates so many cards. And hey, if I'm not engaged with you, I can also trap you. And that's damage.
Yeah.
So, doubling down on that,
Thing. That's cool. I really appreciate that insight, like into like a unique way to think about like dealing with an opponent. Because like people often say that they can see how I'm an engineer, but maybe this is also another way is you basically are quantifying the play experience in a way that's like really easy to like look at. And for me, that's like super valuable. So I might start to think about that like when I play my games. If I do X, like what are the possible list of outcomes that can happen based on the faction that I'm playing specifically and the list they're running specifically. It's cool.
It's almost like process flowing it, right? As you know, and there's all kinds of things. I do that as well for like when I've like been played against as well. Like, what components do I want in my list? Because I don't have reactions. So something like, for me, Harmer, but something like Asher 2 would be an interesting addition to a Greyjoy list because it adds a factor in that you otherwise wouldn't normally have. I'm not suggesting that she's good, but it adds that kind of like framework into a list build that you can maybe then play with. And it's stuff like that I kind of like run with and enjoy. But it doesn't work, clearly, as he says, running Eric multiple times. So yeah. Right. I think. Oh yeah, you mentioned last one. Sorry. About the play, like the board state and stuff. Mentioned it earlier with like we're getting one shot and things like this, and then the deployment. I actually think deployment specifically is a massive part of the game right now. You kind of identified that yourself, like misdeploy, list doesn't work all of a sudden.
Yeah, especially in infantry games. Like I will often, I don't know if my opponents just do this a lot, but Curtis, the Targaryen player, he will spend like the first turn and a half, like just essentially redeploying his army, moving around, and an infantry army can't really do that. So like kind of how you're deployed is kind of how you're stuck with it. So yeah, deployment in a rank and flank game with low mobility, I feel like it's always going to be massively valuable.
Yeah, it really is. And again, Greyjoys, they're not very maneuverable. You know, they're all infantry. Wendy does his bit, but it's really not enough.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if I was to like your analysis, you're gonna like memory dump, if you will, your mind dump. I do think that the foundations are all there. It's just now bringing them all together. And like you say, I think keep trying the 2 NC lists. I do think you'll probably see more success with 3, and you said yourself that a lot of your history is with 3. Yeah, as a general tip, Scott, though, I don't know if you're aware. We will see. But you enjoy the site, you enjoy the stats.
Yeah.
If you want list ideas, there is a Greyjoy player you could probably look at.
Oh, absolutely. Let's check it out. Or whenever.
This guy at the top here, Mikkel, you may have seen him on Pike before.
Oh yeah, I know that name.
Yeah, he's pretty good at the game.
Yeah.
Guy from Spain, lovely guy by the way, Mikkel. He plays almost exclusively Greyjoys. So, if you wanted to go and get some list ideas, get some like, even if it's like taking his list and like then making it your own by like taking things out you don't like, I do think he runs, for example, a lot of neutral stuff. So yeah, Flame Man. So maybe he's looking at those and maybe he's trying to pull them around to what you wanted to run. Might be a good idea. But he has got plenty and plenty of Greyjoy list ideas and kind of like things that he runs.
3 units of Ironborn archers. Let's go. What the heck? I love this.
Yeah. So there you go. If anything, use this man as a good idea.
All right, will do.
He's pretty good at the game though as well. It does help that he's pretty good at the game.
Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, we are nearing the end of today's show, and we will quickly go into the tournament segment as we would finish it off. There is actually, I did actually forget a last little bit of news that I did want to cover with everybody, in case people didn't know, and that is we saw a Spanish tournament turn up for Spanish nationals that's occurring in September this year. Fantastic, love to see it. I think it's probably going to be run on stats, certainly it has previously. Big news, everybody. Asmodee are kind of like running it, collaborating with it, whatever. On the bottom here, if anyone can read this in Spanish, thankfully, as I say, my Spanish is impeccable and I totally didn't translate this before the episode. The World Championship will be held in 2023 in Thailand. So,
wow, Thailand.
Yep.
Is there an audience there for this game?
I asked this exact question. There is a growing community. I don't know how large it is. It is their CMON headquarters is in Singapore, and they have had experience with running events in like that area of the world before. So I think they've gone safe for the first Worlds option. We could talk about like, is this really the most sensible with stuff like, you know, a huge player base being European based. There's a relatively large US scene that's now growing, thankfully. We could question whether or not Thailand was the best choice, but yeah, it is happening in Thailand, and rumor has it that they may be paying for flights for people to get there as well.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Dang.
So winners of national events, that's things like Gen Con happening this coming weekend, will potentially be invited. For us in the UK, it'll be the London Grand Tournament, the massive event we've got running in September, October. The German national event that's happening like this coming weekend. The Spanish national event, the French national event happening in Bordeaux. All of those events, including the Italian national event that's already run, I'm guessing. So yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you're setting up to go to Thailand essentially. That's which is pretty cool. It's a cool country to go to for sure.
It is, yeah, and I really want to go over there now, right? I really want to win a national event anyway.
Yeah.
And now I really want to go over and get a shot at going to Thailand. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cool.
All right then, we'll run into kind of like what is coming up in the near future. Give all these places a shout out. So we've got an event happening in Lexington, Kentucky. Small event, Monday Night Melee. That is happening tonight, starting tonight. So I hope all the guys in Kentucky who may be watching enjoy yourselves. We've got an event happening in New South Wales in Australia, Windsor. So that's happening on Saturday. We've got an event happening on Saturday and Sunday, which is the German Nationals event. I was talking to Ilya, about some of the stuff there. I really, really hope that German Nationals event goes really well. And he's also got a scenario that I think he's going to have, like a custom-built scenario, used as kind of like a meet and greet event type thing that he's going to run, which is awesome as well. So some custom stuff there. We've got an event happening in the House of Orcs. Jasper from the House of Orcs and everything that they're doing, fantastic work, trying to grow the Italian scene. So, yep, hope that goes really well. We've got an event happening in Poland, in Warsaw. Where would we be without an event happening in Poland every week? God,
every week.
Utah, the Northern Utah Open happening on July 30th through to Tuesday the 2nd, which is nowhere near you, Scott, but it's one certainly closer to you than me.
Yep, definitely.
The top cup for the German Nationals, that's happening on the Sunday. So the top 16, I think top 8, I think they're doing, cut for German Nationals is happening on Sunday. There is an event happening in Santander, Spain on Sunday. And the Bad Moon one in London's technically next week. It's next Tuesday, so I'll have to stop there. So this week we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 events happening across the world. I really hope they all go well. Scott, are you going to be attending any of these events?
I will not be, but I am going to be watching the results from Gen Con because I have several friends who are involved in that, and I can't wait to see how it works out for them.
Is that this weekend as well?
I know that the person who normally produces my streams, Evan, isn't going to be able to next Thursday. So I think it's not this week, but sometime next week.
Yeah, I think it's next week. Yeah. Carlo's over in the US as it stands. He's actually in the US already. He's going to be going to Gen Con. He's playing in the Ultimate Frisbee World Championships randomly. And for what it's worth, if anybody cares, earlier today he unfortunately lost. They're 3 games into the event and they lost their first group game. So they're currently 2-1. But they are still in contention to winning the World Championship, if anyone cares. But yes, all right then. We will end the episode there. Scott, any last words from yourself?
Thank you for having me on. This was a ton of fun. I love the game with Song of Ice and Fire. So any chance I can get to talk about it more often is always welcomed. Yeah, I appreciate you having me on the show.
Nice, all right. Have you enjoyed yourself on it?
Absolutely, it's a ton of fun.
Cool. The check is in the mail for saying that. So, thank you very much for everyone who's joined us, guys. I hope you've all really enjoyed today's episode. Thanks again to Scott for joining us, and for anyone who's playing games with A Song of Ice and Fire over the next week. I really hope you enjoy yourselves. I'll be back again next week with somebody, who knows, and we'll do this all again. Thank you very much for tuning in, guys.
Ready? Aim!
There's too many.
Anyone see my mammoth?
Stubby!